Hello and welcome to Inside Music, episode number 185. As always, I'm your host, James Shotwell, and I'm recording this just days before my 32nd birthday. Yes, I'm about to turn the big 3-2, and though I don't really feel any different, it does give me a chance to reflect. I mean, hitting 30 was a weird one, but the deeper I get into the 30s, the more and more I feel separated from, I guess, the youth, for lack of a better word. I find myself trying to uncover what's happening in the world of music and in the world of pop culture, and I don't always understand it, but I'm trying my best, and I hope that this show helps some of you do that as well. This episode, unlike many of our recent episodes, which have been with rock bands talking about the business of rock, is more about the business of music, and I think you're going to like it. My guest is none other than Andrew Spalter, the founder of East Goes Global, a business that exists to help artists understand the Chinese marketplace. And not just the Chinese marketplace, as much as Asia as a whole and how it can relate to the music industry here in the States. You know, all too often, I think artists upload their music to distributors thinking that it's going to go all over the world, and to some extent it does. But when somebody like TuneCore or DistroKid claims we'll get your music in, 150 stores all over the world, they don't actually mean that your music will be available in every country. In fact, it wasn't until October 11th that TuneCore introduced distribution to Chinese music services, and that's actually a huge deal. Chinese streaming services are vastly more popular than the services that we obsess over here in the States. As a good example, Spotify just announced that it has over 111 million paid monthly users. With all of their free users added into that, the number shoots up to about 250 million, which is certainly no small figure. But QQ Music, based out of China, has over 800 million users. Now, you don't have to be really good at math to understand that that means there is a massive audience over there who only got access to a lot of music that's available here in the States within the last 2 months. Now, what Andrew does is that he helps artists at various levels understand the market, how to get into it, and how to navigate it. That's also what we're going to talk about in this podcast today. We're going to talk a little bit about how Andrew found himself in this position, but also his advice for musicians, especially those who may be just starting out or who may not have the money to invest in a publicist or a big company like East Goes Global, and how they can get into the Chinese marketplace, how they can log into their artist accounts on all these other social platforms and streaming platforms and make sure that their pictures are up to date and that their bios are right and that everything that people need to get into your music and understand who you are as an artist is correct and up to date. Andrew gives a great example in this episode about Justin Bieber having a profile on one of these streaming services where the photo is more than 5 years old. And that's not speaking anything ill of Justin Bieber's team. I'm sure they're amazing, but the music business has only recently really started to embrace the idea of musicians having global reach. Now, that's always been a thing that was possible, of course, and there have been artists that have crossed over time, but these days, anyone can do it. You can be an artist based in Carmel, Indiana right now, who is hugely popular in China with the right marketing moves. Now, why you would choose to do that, I don't know. But who knows? Maybe the people who get you best live on the other side of the world. And in this conversation, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can reach out and make a connection with them. But before we get there, I want to get over a few quick details. First and foremost, this episode of Inside Music and all episodes of the show are brought to you by Holics, the industry standard for music promotion. Now, what that means is that Holics helps artists, publicists, and record labels from all over the world share new and unreleased music with various tastemakers. Some of the artists that trust Holics include Tool, Blink-182, Chance the Rapper, Mariah Carey, Steve Aoki, and thousands upon thousands more. You can join Holics today and get your first month of promotional services absolutely free by visiting Holics.com. That's Haulix.com. Go there, click the sign up button in the upper right-hand corner, and you will get access to a full month of service absolutely free. Once again, it's Haulix.com, Haulix.com. I also want to ask that you head over to our YouTube channel. MusicBiz is the name of the channel. That's MusicBiz. And we share this podcast as well as informational videos, advice, tutorials, news updates, and a whole lot more. It's growing really quick, and I really think that you're going to enjoy it. So please head over to YouTube and subscribe today. And finally, give some time to get into East Goes Global. Right now, the music industry is in a state of evolution, and people are starting to think bigger than ever, and that's what I love about what Andrew is doing and what we're going to talk about today. He sees the big picture, and I think that we could all benefit from doing the same in our own lives. So listen to what he has to say, look into his company, and above all else, start dreaming big, okay? Now sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Andrew Spalter.
can't complain, man. Just cruising through.
What's Tuesday like in your world?
Just catching up on a bunch of stuff, new client outreach, and following up on some existing projects and releases that we're gearing up for on Friday.
Okay, I know a lot of the industry starts to take a little bit of time off this time of year or slow down, but it seems like you're just cruising along normal speed.
Yeah, well, next week I think most of people are off, and then obviously around Christmas the whole industry kind of shuts down for a few weeks.
Yeah, that's not the reality in my job. We work pretty much around the clock. I know last year I was busy working. Let me think about it. Like 2 days after Christmas, I remember we had like a staff meeting and stuff, and I was like, no one else is even in the office right now.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about I guess everything really, but I want to talk about East Coast Global. I guess that's probably what you'd like to talk about as well. So for people that are listening that are not familiar with East Coast Global, can you kind of give us the Marvel origin story of the company and how you got involved in everything that you do?
Yeah, sure. So it started closely about 2 years ago. I was in China and I was the day-to-day and tour manager for an artist named Jessie J, who's a British pop artist. She was on a big TV show in China called Singer. And what that enabled me to do was live in China and work in China for about 4 months, and just kind of learn how different their entertainment industry was from ours. Everything from streaming, social media, not, them in China not having access to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Google, Spotify, you kind of name it. It's just kind of this untapped market for a lot of the Western side of the world where no one's really capitalizing across their DSP verticals or social media. So I immediately saw that working with an artist that was signed to a worldwide deal, and it was very difficult for us to kind of get the information that we wanted to from DSPs and social media, and even just little things like best practices and whatnot. No one could really tell us how to establish that, which definitely was a big, red flag, especially coming from a management point of view. So the show wrapped, and I just couldn't, after that show, I just couldn't kind of get a good night's rest because I was constantly thinking of what can be done, what should be done, what isn't happening, what needs to be happening in this market, for just about everyone in the industry. And being in the industry for a few years, I would ask around to my friends who are both artists and managers themselves and go, hey guys, like, what do you have going on in China? Have you ever seen a report? Do you know, how is your music being distributed out there? Have you ever claimed royalties from it? I mean, the stuff that you would generally hear from this side of the world working, this side of the world, just wasn't happening in China. So that's ultimately what led me around 1.5 years, 2 years ago to start East Coast Global, where I was helping a lot of, and to this day, helping a lot of Western musicians do their digital media, so Chinese social media, as well as help manage their DSP profiles, verifying their accounts, posting their accounts, collecting in some retrospect, getting exclusive licensing and catalog distribution deals specifically with those DSPs in China, and kind of looking at it as you would from a manager's point of view, but specifically just for the China space. Since then, I've built a team around me where I have a few people on the ground here in Los Angeles and then the same out in Shanghai, and working, around the clock to make sure that your artist is being serviced in a market that was previously kind of untapped for them. So that's our bread and butter. We started with musicians. Recently, we got into TV, film, actors, actresses, modeling, and soon going to be in sports, in the sports world in Q1 of 2020. So, that's the kind of gist of it.
No, that's a good summary. Real top level, what do you think is the thing that I guess most musicians don't realize about the potential of that marketplace? Because I agree with you. I see a lot of musicians who often seem surprised that anyone is able to travel to that part of the world and perform shows. Or sometimes, they announce a show in the East that is like a one-off show or two shows, and people are like, how does the economics of all that work? And it is a largely untapped, misunderstood area, I think, for a lot of people in the music industry, but kind of real high level stuff. What do you think so many artists are missing out on when they think of, or maybe because they're not thinking about that market?
I think ultimately it's just the knowledge of, number one, specifically that space. There's about 1.5 billion people. So over there alone, it's about 1/7 of the world's entire population that doesn't necessarily know who you are, nor, are you working that market. And another thing is that it doesn't just include how do I put this? It doesn't just include the Chinese people that are within China. It includes the Chinese people that are living around the world, right? 20% of Toronto is Chinese Canadian. 11% of Vancouver is Chinese Canadian. 600,000 to 800,000 New York City, Manhattan living citizens are Chinese American. Similar to LA, similar to Houston, Miami, Chicago, all these territories are huge markets for Chinese Americans, Chinese Canadians, and people that, whether they're out here, it's kids out here for a few years for college, or it's people that have been living here their lives and just are of Chinese descent. I think the big miss is the overall lack of understanding, and also no kind of impetus or desire to understand it, simply because people just think it's too foreign, right? But we wouldn't be doing our jobs if that was the case.
Absolutely. And, maybe this, I sound silly here, but something that I've been noticing in the last few years that I've tried to use to talk to artists about the international market is seeing bands that are already popular in China and other Asian countries that make an appearance in the United States and seemingly don't have any attention from like top 40 or whatever, but can sell out giant spaces. Like there is this very huge market that almost seems to exist underneath the current of, top 40 or what is generally considered like pop culture. There's this whole other subsection that is thriving and has this gigantic audience that seems so hungry for content all the time that is virtually not served at all by most US artists.
Right. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. But it's also the same thing coming from that end of the world. The Chinese population didn't grow up with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, Google. So those artists and their teams and people that are working that side of the world see this and they think the same thing. It's kind of untapped for both parties.
So what are the major, DSPs in the Chinese marketplace? Is it not, I guess everyone would assume that it's the same ones that we have here, but what are the big platforms there?
So I think first and foremost is Weibo. And Weibo is like the Facebook, Twitter of China. It's been around since, I think, 2009. So it's definitely on the older side of things. And that has about 500 million users. Then there's Douyin, which is ByteDance owned. ByteDance also owns TikTok. And Douyin is just the Chinese version of TikTok. You can't access it unless you have a Chinese iTunes account. You can't download it or even find it in the App Store. And similar to people who are living in China, if you don't have a European, US, UK, British, basically anywhere outside of China iTunes account, you can't see or download TikTok. So they're two of the same platforms, just for different markets. And that is the number one social media app in China currently. And then you have QQ Music. Now we're getting into streaming. QQ is a Tencent owned and operated streaming company, and they have I believe the latest report was 800 million users that use their streaming platform, which is about 3 to 4 times the total amount of Spotify users. And then you have NetEase Music, which is the equivalent of Spotify. It's for a younger demographic. It's engaging. It's more used, I would say, on a daily basis. And that has about 600 million users. And then you could get into like the equivalents of Google, which is which is Baidu, and then you had Bilibili, which is more of like a news source, and also Google and YouTube service. So it's a bunch of random stuff, you know, but all things that we use here, you know, just their versions of the platforms.
You know, and I remember reading maybe a month ago, we do a lot of work with TuneCore's team in promoting, you know, artist advice and columns. But I know that TuneCore only added QQ Music maybe a month ago, like in early October. I feel like they put out an announcement. So
yeah, DistroKit, all of them. Yeah.
So there's probably a lot of artists out there who, you know, when you sign up for a lot of those distribution platforms, they say like you'll have your music in like 1,500 stores or something like that. I guess people probably assume that they're already in those markets and haven't even been paying attention to it.
They already assume, yeah. When you click worldwide distribution, you think it is worldwide. And that, you know, that is one of the things that up until recently it's not. And on top of that, just because it's distributed doesn't mean that your profile photo's updated, you're a verified artist on the page, your bio's updated, it's translated into Chinese. There's so much that is missed that simply, for instance, if you're a Chinese artist and you put a video on YouTube, are you going to have the title, the caption, the bio about it, you know, all the text posts in English or Chinese? Most likely you're going to, I mean, I would advise that you put it in English because majority of YouTube users speak English. In China, if you're releasing a song, if you're whatever, I highly implore you, make sure that you have the Chinese lyrics translated and the Chinese bio and the Chinese artwork and things, Chinese subtitling on videos, all that sort of stuff, so that when you're supplying to those distributors and platforms, they're adhering to that market. If you want to be a truly global artist, this is the work that you have to do. And a lot of people just simply don't do it.
And is that kind of where East Goes Global comes into the fold?
Yeah, of course. So that's where we manage the Chinese social media accounts for people. We manage the DSP, manage the distribution channels alongside. So we're on email with TuneCore, AWOL, everyone, every distributor, making sure that things are going up properly, they're updated properly, and on directly with the DSPs within China themselves to make sure that it's happening. So that's where we come in, but also it's not like there's a secret sauce to it, something that you just need to, something that you need to focus on. If I were anyone listening and you don't have a budget to hire on a team to work a release or a full-time thing, bring on an intern that's a Chinese intern that's from a local college and interested in the music industry that can really help out and help, bridge the gap between the two worlds.
Yeah, you have my mind racing here, and I speak to so many artists who don't have, their Spotify profile set up with like photos and their location in their bio. So, the idea of, figure out how to get to QQ Music and then get your account and get it all verified. It seems like there's so many hurdles to that a company like yours makes sense. But my next question to you was going to be like, what is your advice for the lower level artists who are trying to tap into those communities? Because coming from a world of alternative journalism and such, there are a lot of bands in like the heavier rock side or the pop punk world who end up developing audiences in China to the point where they can eventually tour over there. But I think there are a lot of bands who never understand how to tap into that market. So for artists that are maybe a little bit smaller, what is your advice on learning those markets and how to tap into them and making sure that you have a presence there, I guess,
Super good question. So I think first and foremost is, and it's like we just said a minute ago, it's TuneCore now distributes into China. There's a lot of distributors that do finally distribute into China. And I think first and foremost is everyone listening, if you're an artist, reach out to your distributor and go, hey, can you send us the links to our Chinese DSP accounts so we could see what our photos are, we could see what our bios are, all that sort of stuff, and actually know where our music is living on those platforms. So that's first and foremost, because 9 times out of 10 artists don't even have a photo up on their channel. Like you go into QQ Music today and you look at Justin Bieber's QQ Music page, his photos from a few years ago. And it's just because no one's asking, no one's raising a hand about it. So I think first and foremost, it's that and making sure that your photo's updated, your bio's updated. And next is just requesting to be verified. Talk to your distributor about that and see if it's even a service they could provide. And if not, please reach out to our team, and we're more than happy to walk, whoever it is through that process. And then from there, take an extra hour to 2 hours of your day to research what Weibo is, what the social media platforms are, and how to go about using them. Weibo has an international feature that you can sign up from outside of China. And I think just starting to post, and whether it's in English or not, but just making sure that you're working those platforms and markets. And then on top of that, I'm going to write a blog post that we're going to host on our channels and probably on my Medium page and whatnot. That kind of has a step-by-step photo walkthrough of how to launch your own Weibo account. And I think that will be very helpful to a lot of readers and users.
Absolutely. And can you speak to, I guess, the royalty situation? I know that's a big topic in all streaming music, but comparatively speaking, is a lot of people are putting a lot of time and effort into Spotify because it has, one of the largest audiences, not the largest as you just kind of revealed to us here, but a lot of people put a lot of their time and energy into promoting to Spotify and they always complain about the royalty rates. So
because it's current, it's what's here. Everyone's talking about it.
Exactly. So what's it competitively is, QQ Music, a much larger service. Is the royalty rate for U.S. artists similar or better, worse?
It's way, way lower.
Okay. So
that's an interesting, that's a really good point to bring up, because China, the music industry within China, it's, how do I put this? It just came out of piracy 5 to 10 years ago. I mean, before that, people were buying physical. Streaming was just a free tiered service. No one was really getting paid, even if you bought records digitally. And it was kind of all up in the air until just about recently it came out of this piracy time. And now people are downloading and buying and whatnot. And I would say the equivalent to today, where for 1 million streams on Spotify, you get paid anywhere from $5 to $7,000 US, I believe. And within the China DSP system, you get paid about $100 to $300 US per 1 million streams. So I should say, while they do have substantially more users, the reason why people are getting such little royalties is simply because it's just come out of piracy a few years ago, just as when we were coming out of the FrostWire, Napster, LimeWire era, ripping YouTube videos, not monetizing, all that sort of stuff. We were also getting paid $100, $300 per 1 million streams. So the only trajectory and only way that I see this going is up.
Well, I mean, overall, it's still good. Plus, you could argue that the potential to hit 1 million plays is arguably easier, given the size of the audience.
Yeah, and also, there's no secret sauce to it. It's just, if you're doing well in the U.S. and if you're doing well outside of China, you're most likely doing okay, if not super well, within the China space. But also, it's like, if you're an artist who's released 2 or 3 records over the past 10 years, right? Or past 5 years or whatever it may be, and you've never worked the China market until now, chances are that your following in China has already pretty much dissipated, just because you've never shown impetus to work that market. Never toured there, never collaborated with an Eastern artist, never updated profile images, never launched social media. So a lot of the time we run into issues where I have to reach out to potential clients and go, hey guys, we don't truthfully think that we could really turn this into brush this off and turn it into a diamond for you, simply because you've never worked this market before.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense.
It's interesting. But that's, at the end of the day, it does make sense,
Absolutely. And I feel like this is something that's going to be an increasingly hot button topic. Like, something that I find so interesting about East Coast Global is I feel like you found a niche before people realized that it was something that needed to be become a niche or be exploited in the way that you found a way to do it for a business, because it is becoming an increasingly big part of the conversation. And, I always point people to K-pop, and it's what's happening in the United States here, like groups like Super M who are selling out like the Staples Center.
Right.
And most people have no idea who that is. And it's like, no, there's a lot of people who know who that is. It's just not on your radar. And you have to think of yourself that way in other countries, where it's like, you can't exist there. You can have a thing there. You just got to like build it and work on it. And it's becoming increasingly necessary, I think, to think globally. We have to get our heads out of just here.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You hit the nail on the head.
Well, what do you think? We're getting near the end of the year here. What do you think is, I guess, we've talked a lot about tips for artists, but just to really break it down before I let you go, real simple, what is like the first thing somebody's trying to start this journey now? They have some songs out there. They feel like they have a good grip on social media, at least here in the States. They want to, at least put their toes in the water. What's like some very, very basic baby steps people can take?
I think, again, first and foremost is, just really just reaching out to your distributor and asking them point blank, how are we doing in China, and can we see our channels that we are on? Okay. Simple as that. See if there's photos. See if there's bios. See if the distribution team even knows what if they can get you a proper answer. And if not, definitely reach out to us. We are more than happy to do a free audit for you, for any of the listeners, and just send you links so that you know what's going on in that space with billions of users.
And that's perfect, man. And you're doing the work that's needed, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate hopping on.
Absolutely. Now, is there a East Coast Global blog maybe people can look at for additional advice and guides on this? Should they just reach out to you personally? What's the best way to find information online related to these items?
Sure. So first and foremost, I would go on our website, www.eastcoastglobal.com. And I would just say, that first and foremost is definitely something that will help gain an understanding of that market, because we kind of highlight how many users the platforms have, what the platforms are, all that sort of stuff that you can see and digest. That's pretty much it. And then we have a contact form at the bottom of the page, so anyone can reach out to us, and we were pretty on it with responses. So more than happy to help.
Well, that's great, man. Thank you again for coming on, and this has been fun and insightful. I really appreciate learning about these marketplaces. That's what excites me about it, and I'm glad to know somebody's out there helping artists figure it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem. Have a great day.
All right, you as well. Bye-bye.